Well, hello, and thanks for joining us. Tonight, I'm just answering a little bit of a question that has been asked me quite a bit in the past few days, and it's something I think is a useful illustration for learning something about William Branham and his method. The question I've been asked a lot about is William Branham's prediction about an American Pope. And what I want to do is I just want to walk you through where this comes from in his teachings and how he arrived at this, because there's a really incorrect perception about the teachings of William Branham, as though he was a great prophet who was receiving all of this divine inspiration where things were coming to him in supernatural experiences. But the thing is, it's just not really true. He made all of that up, and he tricked us and he deceived us. And I just want to walk you through using some of the stuff about an American Pope and specifically Revelation chapter 13, some of the things he said about that, to try and just demonstrate this to you. Now, as I do that, I am going to show you here a few images. Now, the first one I want to show you is actually right here. So, William Branham, his pattern was to read from the books in his library and then fit them into his sermons and tell us that those things that he read out of his library books was a divine revelation that he received from God. Now, the book I have right up here is a book by a man named Uriah Smith. The title of this book is Daniel and Revelation. This is the 1944 edition. This is what William Branham had in his library. Now, this book is by Uriah Smith, as I mentioned. He was a Seventh-day Adventist, okay? Now, I'm not a Seventh-day Adventist. I don't advocate, necessarily believing anything in this book. It's rather shocking to me that William Branham copied things from the Seventh-day Adventists, because many of them are cultic themselves in a variety of ways. There's a lot of problems with that movement. So the fact that he even copied from this source is problematic. But what he would do, he would take books like this and he would read from them, and then he would tell us that what he was telling in his sermon was actually something from divine revelation from God. Now, I know that William Branham had this book for a variety of different reasons. One of those reasons is that he gave copies of this book, as long as the other one I'm going to show you, to the pastor of my church. I have the pastor of my church on recording explaining when William Branham gave him the books, right? I know that is absolutely something that was going on among the old-time message preachers. I also know William Branham on tape a number of times mentioned Uriah Smith by name, and he referenced this book by name in some sermons and said that he had read it. So we know beyond a shadow of a doubt that he had it. The same with a book by Clarence Larkin I'm going to show you here in a little later in the same informational setting. So William Branham owned this book. He had it in his library. He shared it with other people. He referenced it on tape, said he had read it. And inside of this book, I'm going to show you just one page. You're welcome to zoom in on these pictures, pause this video, and now if you like, you can pause this video, you can zoom in on any of these pages here, and you can look at them a little bit more closely and just see what's written on the pages. But in this section of Uriah Smith's book, he is telling us that the Two-Horned Beast in Revelation chapter 13 comes out of America. And there's a very nice illustration in the book that just makes it plain as day. And in his teachings, basically that beast comes out of America. It gives life to the image of the beast, which he says is a union of Protestant churches that eventually merges with the papacy and gives power to the papacy. And Uriah Smith teaches this all very plainly in this book. He explains how it comes out of America. There's probably about 30 pages in this book dedicated to this subject. This beast, it comes out of America. It gives rise and power to the Antichrist, and basically brings on the end of days, right? And so it's coming out of America. And so this is a very common thing. William Branham talked about this a lot, and in his sermons, if you take his sermons and you come back and actually look at his books, he is reading out of this book as he preaches his sermons. Now, here's an example of him doing that when he preached on the second seal. He preached the second seal in 1963 in a series of sermons on all seven seals. And he's very plainly talking about how the two-horned beast from the 13th chapter of Revelation comes out of America, and that it in some way represents America. Right? And so, and again, as you read this, he is using the language, the symbology, everything out of this book by Uriah Smith. Okay? This is exactly what he's doing. So the Two-Horned Beast comes out of America. That comes from Uriah Smith's book. Okay, so that's the first part I want to show you. Now there's another book I want to show you. This is the Book of Revelation by Clarence Larkin. William Branham also had the same copy of this in his library. I know all that the same way. You know, our pastor's on tape talking about getting this book also from William Branham. William Branham references this book directly. There's pictures of it in his library. We know he owned it. And in this book, there is also a section on Revelation chapter 13, which Clarence Larkin wrote. And in this book, he talks again about this same two-horned beast that is in the chapter. And in this book, Clarence Larkin, he talks about this beast being part of what he calls the satanic trinity, or Satan's trinity. You'll find this is the next page right after the one you just saw. And you'll see there towards the middle of the page where he's talking about Satan's trinity. Now, what Clarence Larkin does is he takes the beast, the image of the beast, the false prophet, and so forth in that chapter, Revelation chapter 13, and he puts them together and says this is a satanic trinity. This is the incarnation of Satan in different forms, essentially. And he says that this two-horned beast is basically the false prophet, the Antichrist, and the Pope at the last days. Okay? Now, if you put that together with what we read from Uriah Smith, what do we got? We got the two-horned beast coming up out of America and in some way becoming a last-day Antichrist, Pope. Now, in my sect of the message, we didn't believe it this way, right? William Branham taught conflicting versions of all this. This is not what we personally believe, where we come from. However, this is one of the many versions of what William Branham taught about this. And he taught this in his sermon on the second seal. Here's an example. So also in the second seal, right, the same sermon we just looked at where he talked about the beast coming out of the earth from Uriah Smith's book. Well, here, look again, he says, notice Satan's trinity. And again, as you read through these and you actually read the words on the pages, he is reading verbatim out of Clarence Larkin's book, just like he also was reading verbatim out of Uriah Smith's book in this sermon on the second seal. And what do you get again when you put those together? You got the two-horned beast coming out of America and becoming a false prophet that takes over the world. Well, you have a pope coming out of America. That's what you got. Okay? And William Branham, he just copied these things out of these books, right? And he presented it to us, and he told us this was all divine revelation that he had received and got from God, okay? Now here's the thing. None of this is original to William Branham. He just copied the pieces from here and there, right? And he presented it to us and said, this is the message I got from God. Now, is there anything really wrong with studying other people's teachings, maybe, and sharing elements of it in your sermon? No, there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, that's normal. I don't know personally that I agree with these things that William Branham is saying here, but it is a fairly normal practice, to study authoritative writers on a topic before you maybe would speak on it. I'm not saying Uriah Smith or Clarence Larkin, either one, are authoritative topics, but this is what authoritative sources, but that's what William Branham did, okay? And so that itself is not really a problem, but here's the thing, okay? William Branham didn't say, I got these things from my library books and I'm presenting them to you. That is not what he said. In fact, on this same sermon on the seventh seal, he made this statement we're going to read here. And I'll point out to you, if you go back to the second seal, every sermon he preached on the seals, including the one we just looked at, he said that he had a supernatural experience before he came out onto the platform and preached his sermon on the second seal. And in that supernatural experience, he got everything that he taught in that sermon, which is a flat-out lie. He was reading elements of that sermon from Uriah Smith, from Clarence Larkin, and others, to be honest with you, in that sermon and presenting it to his audiences. And he lied about having a supernatural experience that revealed it all to him. That was a bold-faced lie. And here on the seventh seal, I just want to point out to you again just how terrible this lie is. Look, when he preached the seventh seal, he reflects back on all of the sermons that he had preached, and he says, on the seals. He reflects back on all these seal sermons, and he says, now I want to make this real clear. Every time that these seals has come to the place, everything I ever believed on them and has read of other people has been contrary to what came to me in the room. Okay, this room next to the podium where he was getting these revelations. Now, what is that but a bold-faced evil lie from the pit of hell? That is a satanic lie right there. He's reading to us out of the books, and then he's lying to us, saying, the Holy Spirit revealed this to me in the room, and this is not what matches any of these books. My goodness, what an abominable lie. This was supposed to be divine revelation revealed to him by angels and the Holy Spirit in the back room, never before known. That's what he's saying right there. This is stuff that was never known by anybody. He's lying. He's lying. The most important revelation of the message, the seals, the 7 seals. He's lying about where he learned it from. Okay? It's not a big deal that you learned from other people. It's not a big deal that you would share stuff useful that you learned somewhere else. But this is way beyond that. William Branham is telling us that a divine supernatural event of the highest magnitude has happened, that God in heaven has done this terrific thing where the seals are broken, and 1963 becomes this great, important thing to the message believer because the seals were miraculously revealed to William Branham in that room. But he is lying through his teeth. He was merely repeating what was in the library books. And here's the thing. It don't really matter whether it's true or rather it's false, right? It don't even matter if we want to go back and argue, was Clarence Larkin right? Was Uriah Smith right? Maybe, maybe not. But that's beside the point, and that is irrelevant. What matters here is William Branham lied to us about the most important supernatural event, supposedly, of his ministry. How in the world do we go on believing the message when the most important supernatural revelation of the message was a hoax, a plain and simple hoax? Brothers and sisters, I don't know how you go on from that. I don't know how you recover the message from that. And I'll be honest, more than anything else, this along with, the things surrounding the seals is what led me to actually discard the message, right? Because it's William Branham lied to us about all those things. He could not have been who he claimed to be. The events he said happened in 1963 did not happen. All a hoax, all a scam. And it's irrelevant. It's irrelevant whether a last day pope comes out of America or the Twohorned Beast has something. All that's irrelevant as far as vindicating that the message is valid or William Branham is anything. He lied to us. He lied to us, brothers and sisters, and that's heartbreaking for someone who loved the message, who loved William Branham, who loved everything about it, to find out that we were betrayed, we were deceived, we were bold-faced lied to. And what's awful is that seeing things like this with your own eyes, there are people in the message who are so, I'm going to use the word wicked, so wicked, that they can see something like this with their own eyes and say, none of that matters. No, it does, and you are wicked for denying that it matters. You're wicked. You're wicked to the core when you deny that these things matter. You become a partaker of an evil lie voluntarily when you refuse to look at these things for what they are. You can go on with it all you want, but you are in a delusion. And when you see things like this, you are knowingly then in the delusion. It's no longer a thing where you were tricked and you're confused and you're believing something without a knowledge of what is right. When you see things like this, you now know, beyond a shadow of a doubt, even though you won't admit it to yourselves, that you are believing a lie and you're choosing to believe a lie. It's awful. It's sad, but it is. It is the truth, my brothers and sisters. I pray for you all. I hope you have a good evening. God bless you.